I have some empty bottles of wine. That's what I could do.
That's very COVID of you.
Little pre-show juggling.
Pre-show.
Yeah.
Okay,
Oh my God.
got about 60 people on. So I think we'll get started. Well, welcome everyone to the 21st Annual Rutgers Jewish Film Festival, virtual this year. We're delighted to see you all. I know you can't see each other, but we know that you're there. I can see the numbers going up. I'd like to thank our sponsors and our patrons for helping make this virtual festival possible, and in particular, the Karma Foundation and the Blanche and Irving Laurie Foundation, along with all of our patrons and sponsors and our film committee. Thank you so much. Tonight we have a special screening of the film, a special discussion of the film, I'm so used to saying that, Latter-day Jew, which did screen at our festival last year at the AMC. And we're delighted to be able to bring it back to you again this year in partnership with the Central New Jersey Jewish Film Festival. Their festival was canceled because of the pandemic, and we were able to partner with them and still let them show the film through our platform and have tonight's conversation. So I'm delighted to introduce Randy Zucker. Randy is the Director of Arts, Education, and Jewish Programs at the JCC of Central New Jersey, and she runs their Jewish Film Festival. And Randy, I'm going to turn the program over to you.
Thank you so much, Karen. Welcome, everyone. I am Randy Zucker from the JCC of Central New Jersey, and I'd like to welcome you all to our program tonight with H. Alan Scott. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the Rutgers Jewish Film Festival for partnering with us and making this event possible. It isn't often that we in Central New Jersey have the opportunity to speak with the star of a film, not to mention one who is a gay, former Mormon, Jew by choice, cancer survivor, writer, and comedian. I am sure you will have many questions for H. Allen, and I encourage you to post your questions in the chat, and we will get to all of them during the Q&A part of the program. Hopefully, you've had a chance to watch the film, Latter-day Jew. It is a delightful film that brings the joy of studying and preparing for a coming-of-age bar mitzvah milestone to a whole new level. Quite different than most of our own personal journeys, I am sure. It is my pleasure to introduce you to H. Alan Scott, who once again is a writer, comedian, who was once a Mormon in Missouri and is now a converted Jew based in Los Angeles. He has been making people laugh for years as he has appeared on the Jimmy Kimmel Show, Ellen, CNN, and MTV. He has written for many news periodicals and is the subject of this documentary, Latter-day Jew, where he documents his spiritual path as he prepares for his bar mitzvah. H. Allen is a very funny and generous man, and we are thrilled to host him in our community. Now, please welcome H. Allen Scott.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here. I have to say, I said this before we went live, but I'll say it to everyone because I'm not afraid to say it. New Jersey Jews are my favorite Jews. I have an odd love for New Jersey, and I'm not necessarily ashamed to say it, except in some circles people make fun of me for it, but I own it. I love New Jersey and New Jersey Jews. So thank you so much for being here. I was actually at Rutgers last year, and it was such a wonderful time and a wonderful community, and I was so eager to be able to go to other parts of Jersey and screen the film, but obviously the world and a pandemic got in the way of me doing that. So here I am, virtually from my dining room / office / filming studio / everything these days. So before we do like a Q&A thing, I usually do the 3 moments in my life that weren't necessarily in the film that I know made me a Jew, or were like my aha moments of like, this is a Jew sign, you should be paying attention. So my first one is, and this is a weird one, but I always say the first day I knew I was a Jew was the day I was baptized Mormon. Let me explain. I Mormon is, the Mormons baptized in an interesting way. They do like we said in the film, they do you get immersed in water and you have to be dunked in this thing, and it's supposed to be like a body of water, but it's often like a jacuzzi situation. And I had delayed my baptism, I hadn't delayed, but because I had so many questions, they had delayed my baptism quite often, which should have been the first sign that I'm a Jew. And then finally, one year, my mom was like, just do it, please. Like all my brothers had done it. I was the last one. I was the holdup, so I had to do it. And the motivation for me to go through with the baptism wasn't because I had found sudden inspiration in the teachings of Joseph Smith and Brigham Young. And it wasn't that I, really thoroughly enjoyed singing with a tabernacle choir. No, the only inspiration I had to actually go through with my Mormon baptism was the missionary that was supposed to be guiding me through the baptism process. Missionaries are young, they're like 18, 19, and my missionary was particularly attractive. And I was a young man. The Mormons baptize you like a little bit late. Like boys get baptized around 8, but because they delayed mine so much, I got baptized around like 11 or 12. I forget the exact age. So I was at like the height of puberty. You know what I mean? Like my eyes were boom, boom, booming around. And the missionary was this like beautiful specimen of like thin blonde. It was just, he was everything that I wasn't. And so I was like, sure, I'll become a Mormon for you. And I go through the baptism process and they're dunking me in this pool, and the missionary holds you while the elder stands above you and says some things, which, I mean, think about it. There are 3 men in a tub and people are holding each other and standing over each other. It's a scenario for something that could have been a totally different type of film, if you know what I mean. And the missionary dunks me down into this water, and I'm not thinking of anything religious. I'm literally only thinking that my head is that close to what makes this missionary a man. And I kind of knew then that was probably the least Mormon I was ever going to be. You don't think of sex when you get baptized. Like that's not a normal thing. And that should be a sign that you're not meant to be doing that. So that was the first sign that I wasn't Mormon and that I probably was a Jew. My second sign was at the bar mitzvah, my first bar mitzvah I had ever attended, ever. And it was in St. Louis, and there was only one Jewish boy in my school, so there weren't many Jews. And he invited me to his bar mitzvah, and I was like, great, I want to go to a party. My mom, she loved to play practical jokes on me. She told me that they circumcised the boy at the bar mitzvah. Now, I believed her, and I went around being me and told every single person, every one of my friends at the bar mitzvah, that Steve was about to get circumcised, every single person. And then finally, after talking to probably 100, 200 kids, I chickened out and I went up to Steve's mom and I was like, yo, great party. I can't see Steve get circumcised. And she looked at me in this sort of like, she didn't laugh, she didn't get shocked. She just kind of looked at me and she took me by the hand to a group of women that all kind of were like her and told me, say exactly what you just told me to this group of women. And I did. And they died of laughter. They died of laughter. I mean, it was like the biggest joke I had ever done. And I had no idea what was funny about it. I was mortified. But looking back, that moment was a moment where not only did I realize I had a gift for something that I didn't quite know what it was or how to harness it, but I could make people laugh and I didn't know why. And also that there was something about me that just sort of like felt natural in this community. There was a connection there that I could, I mean, if you can make a room full of Jews laugh, you know you're doing something right. You know what I mean? And so then years later, after I've gone through the baptism, I've gone through everything in my life and I've done the whole, now post-cancer and everything, I did the conversion and all of that, I did the mikveh here in Los Angeles. And I didn't think, to me, when my rabbi here in Los Angeles in Culver City, Rabbi Zach Shapiro, he mentioned the possibility of doing the mikveh. I just thought it was a part of the process. And I didn't really think much of it, or I didn't think of it as a special thing necessarily, because I just figured it was what I had to do in order to convert to Judaism. And I go through the mikveh and I'm in the water there and the rabbi is above me and he leaves. And I then start to sort of have a panic attack. It's like I lost my words and my thoughts, and I couldn't really describe. And even for weeks after the mikvah, I couldn't even describe the emotion that I was feeling because it was so strong. And for a moment, I thought, did I do something wrong? Did I make the wrong decision? Like, what is this? Why am I having this sort of reaction to this moment? Why is this moment in this water so important? And then sitting there in the water, I realized that it wasn't wrong and it wasn't me. It wasn't even a bad feeling. It was me literally being engulfed by the Jewish community and realizing that this was that physical response that I had to this moment and everything that I had done that preceded it. It was a sign that I was finally doing something that I was meant to be doing all along, that I should have been all along, and that was always there. And I didn't even need to convert because I was always a Jew. And it was in that moment that really sort of confirmed it for me. So whenever people ask like, what inspired me to convert, or when did you know that you were Jewish? There's not one moment, is it that I had a crush on the Mormon missionary, or is it that I killed at my first bar mitzvah and I realized I was a comedian, or was it at the mikvah when I had that sort of emotional response? I don't know. What I do know is that I always felt like what my rabbi said in the film. I always felt that my soul is Jewish, and I really firmly believe that now. And it always has been. I just needed to figure out how to find out that I was Jewish, and I did. And it led me to being here today with all of you. So thank you so much for having me and watching the film, and I'm ready to answer all of your questions. I think Randy's
Okay,
back.
we have a first
question process.
We have a first question. We have lots of questions coming in. The first question you touched on somewhat, but Steve is interested to know if you can say more specifically about what drew you to Judaism.
I mean, as in the film, I talk about how it was studying in college that I really sort of understood the early parts of what it means to be Jewish. And that was when I really sort of figured out what even Judaism was. But what drew me to Judaism, a lot of people, like I said in the film too, a lot of people want to equate my experience with cancer and chemo as sort of the catalyst for what drew me to actually convert. And that really was just about me having more free time, so I could actually do the work to do the conversion properly. But what really drew me to Judaism was the idea of a community, of something larger than myself. You know what I mean? I had needed so much in my life was about me. And I think a lot of people, especially artists, can maybe relate to that so much about who I am and what I do for a living is just about me and everything in my head. And I realized that I needed something to ground me that aligned with my personal beliefs, beliefs about the world, my personal political beliefs, my ethical beliefs, all of those things. And I found all of that within Judaism. And that's really what drew me to Judaism. Does that answer the question?
Beautiful. Yes. Yes. I mean, I'm sure it's very complex and not something that can just, be answered. And it happened over time and has a lot of different answers. Nina,
and a lot of emotions too.
For sure. For sure. Have you been in touch with your one Jewish friend from childhood? And were you ever able to connect with the mother of your friend who canceled the meeting with you? Referring to a very poignant scene in the film. It was clearly so painful for you, and hope you have had closure. Sweet, Nina.
Yeah, I'll answer the first question, Nina. I have been in touch with the friend from my childhood, and I saw him at my reunion. I wasn't anticipating going to my high school reunion, but then I just wound up able to go. And I told him he hadn't seen my act, which I was offended by, because I'm one of the 3 more famous people who graduated from our class. There are 2 more famous than me, but I am the 3rd, and he should have seen my performance. But he hadn't. And I told him that I had used that story at the bar mitzvah in my act, and through stuff that I had done. And he was like, what? Like he had no idea. So he was happy about it because, you know, everyone likes to have a little attention. And he's a good guy and he's really supportive, and he's a lawyer now. He's made his mother very proud, and yeah, he's doing well. The mother of my friend in the film, I have not attempted to contact her, nor has she attempted to contact me. I don't know if she's seen the film or not. One of the reasons why I haven't contacted her is twofold. I want to respect the memory of her son and her memory of her son, and I would hate to do anything to cause her any sort of, you know, stress or trauma or trigger anything that maybe she doesn't want to talk about or feel right now. And so I want to give her that space. And, you know, it isn't I did what I had to do, and she did what she felt she had to do. And also on top of that, I also want to respect my own story and my own relationship with Derek. And, you know, as a queer person, there is this idea of chosen family. And I think Jews can very much relate to the idea of family and the different types of families that make up, you know, Jews don't just have the family that live in your house. You have the families at your synagogue, and you have the people in your life. And it's family is a much larger term, at least for me it is. And so I want to respect the relationship and the memory that I have of Derek. And yeah, I think it is very different than the one maybe he had with his mother. And I want to value that and who we were and who I am and what we had.
That makes sense. I mean, that's very respectful. And so thank you for acknowledging that. Nice note from Frankie. Hi, H. Allen. Great to see you again. Please tell us how your wonderful
Frank.
mom is doing. As the most resilient person in the world, can you give us some advice on pandemic fatigue? And what does your shirt say? 3 questions. How's your mom?
Wow. Okay. So my mom, yeah, let's go through the things. My mom is great. My mom is doing well. She is very much isolating and socially distancing from everybody. She has made it very clear that we are not allowed to come home for the holidays this year. And she's doing great. We have frequent Zooms, and she's in good spirits, and her health is good. And so there's nothing more you could ask for in that situation. What was the second question? I forget.
She said, as the most resilient person in the world, meaning you, can you give us some advice on pandemic fatigue?
Well, I do think that all Americans, people in the world for waiting that long.
You're a little bit frozen.
Fatigue is, I mean, we were talking about beforehand. Oh, did I freeze? Can you see me now?
Yes.
Can you see me now? Can you see me now? Am I moving? Am I doing things? I hope so. My advice for pandemic fatigue is I've actually, like, I hate to be that person to gloat, but I feel like I've become a better Jew in the pandemic because I've been reading a lot and I've been studying a lot and just sort of doing a lot of deep dives into different things that I felt I needed to learn more about being Jewish. So that's what I've really been doing, which sounds like I don't know. I guess I'm a geek, I guess. I don't know. And my shirt is my friend. She's a drag queen, and it says the Naomi Smalls show, and she had a show, and she's great. And so I love supporting her. So that's who it is. Naomi Smalls, look her up. She's amazing.
Excellent. Good. That's good. Stephanie wants to know, how did you know what Judaism meant if you hardly lived among any Jews? Good question. Stephanie.
Yeah, that's a great question. And, you know, I'll admit I didn't as a child necessarily know what Judaism meant, but I will say, as I got older and I started to, you know, study and read and meet more Jews, I realized that my mindset as a child was very Jewish, and I was being Jewish without knowing that I was being Jewish, without any role models or anything, which, again, a sign. And that's kind of what I knew. I mean, I'll admit, before I really sort of left for college, the only idea of Judaism that I really had was like Seinfeld and Schindler's List. So like, it wasn't necessarily the best teachings. But I'm so glad that I made up for that and know a lot now.
True, excellent. This is a question Carol has, and I have the same question. How did you select Rabbi Shapiro as your rabbi? How did you find him, and tell
Yeah,
us a little about your experience with him?
well, I think that finding a rabbi that you jive with is just so important. And I am so grateful that I found Rabbi Zach Shapiro. And I'm also grateful too, even after the film and years later, I've been speaking a lot of different places, and I've actually become friends with a lot of rabbis, which is so strange. I never thought I'd have so many rabbis in my life. But finding the rabbi was hard for me in that I wanted to finding a rabbi and a synagogue that I sort of got understood and felt like was for me. Took a lot of searching, and I was just kind of open to the search. I went to a lot of LGBTQ temples here in Los Angeles, Reform temples, and they were great, and I support them. And I sometimes will go to one of them in normal times, I will go to one that's near me. But it was Rabbi Zach Shapiro and his temple Akiva, that it was just authentically diverse in a way that was really important to me, and that met with my life and who I am and the community that I have and the people that I surround myself with. And so that's sort of how I made my decision.
Okay, wonderful. Frankie's interested to know what is your next project, and if you have anything on YouTube.
Oh, I think I do. I try not to pay attention to YouTube.
I know you have a podcast.
But
if you want to talk about
yes,
that.
I have a few things that I'm working on. I have a podcast that I do with Elliot Glazer. He was on Broad City and other shows. And then another friend of mine, Brent Sullivan, who's also a really funny comedian. So we have that every single week. And I also have a Golden Girls podcast, of course, because of the Golden Girls tattoo, that we do sometimes, but we've covered every episode, so we're not doing it as often. And then I'm also working on a project for Audible that will come out hopefully very soon. So I've been working on that through the quarantine.
Excellent. That was one of my questions I had prepared, that I was wondering how you have been spending this quarantine time. I know I have been obsessively baking, and I wanted to know what you've been doing, what you've been learning, any new skills.
Well, like I said, I have been doing a lot of reading of Jewish books and stuff to sort of educate myself and to broaden my palette of Jewishness, if you will, because I find at a Q&As, Jews like to ask and really grill about Jewish stuff that you know. So I wanted to know everything I could. And so I'm doing that a lot. I am baking quite a bit, and I'm also just working a lot. Like I was saying to you and Karen beforehand, before we went live, I feel like I've been working more during quarantine than I have even before we went into lockdown. I think because right now, and I'm not grateful for it, but I'm grateful for the work, but I'm not grateful for COVID, obviously. But I'm grateful that I feel like, in a weird way, and I think Jews can relate to this, COVID was a cultural reset. There was something that was reset that allowed people to find and really cherish and celebrate the things that we need more of, I think, in life. And I think a lot of what we need more of is culture and arts and entertainment and people, being vessels of communication. And I'm really grateful to be a part of a community that does that for a living.
That is lucky. Another question that I was also wondering, are you still in touch with your New York friends, with the Mormon couple that also converted? And I was curious to know if, since this film has come out, if more people have reached out to you that have done the same thing. How common is it?
Yeah, I wouldn't. I mean, I am. We're in touch on Facebook, the way people can be in touch these days. And they're doing great. They're very, involved in the Jewish community, and they've definitely probably gone more deeper into the religiosity. Is that the word? Of their lives, and I really respect that. And the other thing, the other part of it that sort of, wait, what was the second part of the question? I'm sorry, I'm blanking.
If since the film, if any other people
Oh,
have
yes.
reached out.
Yeah, they have. It's been really surprising. It's one of the things that I find so interesting is a lot of queer people, LGBTQ people, who have been in communities, Jewish communities, who maybe don't necessarily celebrate LGBTQ identities in the way other Jewish communities do, have reached out to me. And it's interesting because when I was sort of a former Mormon, of course, there's a lot of former gay Mormons out there, but they never really reached out to me. And it's the queer Jews that are struggling within their communities that have reached out that I have found so touching, because we have a lot. I think Jews are so. I think we've come so far as a people, but we also have so much more to do as a community to sort of create inclusivity, and I'm really grateful to maybe be a small part of being able to communicate with people who feel maybe not so celebrated.
That's wonderful. Renee is wondering, do you have any emotional connection to the Mormon religion, since it was a part of you for the better part of your upbringing? And how did you reconcile that?
Well, first I'll say the joke that I just thought of when you asked that question, and then I'll give the real answer. The joke is my most emotional connection to Mormons at this point is the new Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. That's the joke. The real answer is, I wouldn't say I have an emotional connection to them. I do have an emotional connection to people disregarding or pushing aside Mormons or anybody of any religion, really. But because I do have a personal connection because of my upbringing and my family. I do get defensive when people talk badly of Mormons, because not all Mormons are bad people, just like not all Jews are bad people, just like not all Catholics are bad people. There are so many good people, and I think if we focus on the things that make us so different, we're really wasting our time and our energy. And it's like, we could really have a lot more fun if we just focused on what made us similar and what we enjoyed together, what we enjoy mutually. So that's my emotional connection, is just trying to focus less on what's bad about everybody and focus more on what we can
Just lost you for a minute. Another, your mother is amazing comment. Thank you. So your mother, Jerry says your mother is amazing, and I agree. I think you do too. And how has the rest of your family dealt with your conversion? And in addition to that, is your family practicing and observant and active in the Mormon faith?
The only one of my family who is sort of observantly Mormon is my older brother Jason, but he's even a little bit at a distance. My mother is not necessarily, she would still identify herself as Mormon just because that's her identity for her life. But like we sort of covered in the film, as soon as that whole ruling on same-sex couples in Mormon communities and what the children of same-sex couples have to go through, my mom has really distanced herself. That was sort of a line in the sand that she couldn't cross. And just like a lot of Mormons, like the Mormon couple we featured in the film, that was a line in the sand that many people wouldn't cross. And so they're not necessarily observant. And my relationship with my family is very strong. I mean, especially during COVID, we Zoom a lot. And it's funny, in the film, one of the things that people notice in the film is my mom, of course, is amazing, and she's really accepting and loving and wonderful. but people look at my siblings, my brothers and my stepfather, and they seem to be very sort of like just very serious and not really moved by anything that I did in the film. And sometimes at Q&As after people see the film, they think that that means my brothers or my stepfather don't really accept my conversion or anything. What I always try to tell people is, no, it's just that they're very boring people. They don't emote anything. They're very, my mother and I suck up all of the energy in the room. And so there's nothing left of personality for my brothers or my stepfather. And we're grateful that they've just accepted that as their lot in life, to sit there patiently and watch me and my mom do what we do. So so they're very accepting. They're just very quiet and boring.
Everyone has a role.
Yeah, I'm grateful for them.
Okay, so a couple of film-specific questions. I'm going to group these also together. Number one is, how did you choose your director, Eliza Rosen? And two, how did the fundraising, how was your experience with the fundraising for the film?
Well, so it's interesting how the film came about. This wasn't my idea at all. In fact, I was working on a true crime reality comedy series. It clearly didn't go anywhere. And as I was sort of pitching it and sort of trying to get that sold, I came across Eliza, and Eliza and I went to dinner, and I just told her this whole idea, and she was excited about it, but she was more focused on the Star of David necklace that I had on at the time, and she was really surprised that I was Jewish. And then I told her my story, and she immediately threw out the idea for the reality series, and she focused in on this idea for this film, and that's how it came about. And you know, for me, I'm so used to, as a comedian and a writer, I'm so used to begging for stage time and begging for work and begging for everything. So like, to have someone come up with an idea for me, that was very weird. So yeah, so she chose me. I definitely didn't choose her. And the fundraising for it, I told Eliza and the producers very early on, listen, I'm friends with comedians. I come from a blue collar family. I am not your meal ticket. Let me tell you that. Like, I am not the one to look for money. So I let them handle all of the fundraising, because I was very, very bad at, I just don't have any contact. I don't know rich people. But that said, we did partner up with two amazing organizations that were instrumental in sort of helping us not only fundraise, but also just like do the film. And one of them is a Wider Bridge. It's a LGBTQ Israeli organization that hopes to take sort of the advances that we've made here in the United States and help LGBTQ people in Israel also get certain rights and liberties that we enjoy here. So we've been focused on that a lot, and they helped us out a lot with the Israeli portion of the film. And then the other group that really helped us out was JQ International. It's a Jewish queer organization based here in Los Angeles, but it's a international organization, I think. And they were really great in helping us with fundraising and getting the word out in the community, and sort of people who were supportive of the Jewish queer community, really getting them to know about what we were doing.
Great, great resources, and kudos to them for encouraging and supporting this great project.
Definitely.
This next one is from Risa. No, it says Risa, but she writes, this is Jason. I am also a Jew by choice.
Hi,
and have two questions.
Oh.
Jason, have you had anyone question your authenticity as a Jew? Also, how long did it take you to feel 100% comfortable with being a Jew after you completed? Was it immediate, or did it take some time? Excellent questions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely excellent questions. Again, the first thing I thought of was a joke when you asked the question.
Let's
which
hear
was
the
the
joke
first time I really
first.
felt like a Jew was when the first time I really felt like a Jew after converting, or right before converting, was when they did the prick, when the mole did the prick. That was, I had to. No, so there are times that certain Jews within the community will maybe not question my authenticity as a Jew, but maybe don't necessarily see me as a as real, I guess. I don't know. And that usually comes, I mean, there's the funny ones, like if you go to Israel, for example, and I go around and I'll say I converted to Judaism, and the typical Israeli will be like, well, why did you do that? Why would you do that? Like, but they're just so secular and so like, so it's almost comical. Like they don't mind that I did it. They just think it's silly that I went to that much work to do it. But then again, there are like, certain groups that just don't want to recognize me as a Jew. But that's the same for if some Reform Jews or some, like there are some groups that just don't accept you, and I have lived a life of some groups not accepting me, so I am a-okay with that. In fact, it made me a funnier person. And when I felt I was really Jewish, for me, honestly, one of the biggest things in the film was figuring out what kind of Jew I meant to be. And that was really important to me because, I didn't have this background of an identity as a Jew, and I needed to figure out sort of my role as a Jew and my purpose as a Jew. And it really came down to in the very end when I stood up there, and went through with everything with the bar mitzvah, and I really got to the point where I realized I've been fired from most of my jobs in my life, like my day jobs. Like I'm not good at anything other than talking. I can write and I can talk. That's about all I can do. And everything else you don't want me to do. And I realized that like the one thing that I have that I can really give back to the Jewish community is by telling my story and hopefully having people relate to either me or something that I've done or said, and that maybe they take that and they relate to someone else that they come across. You know what I mean? If they've never met a gay person and then they go and meet someone, or never, I don't know, there's just I'm there to tell a story, and Jews really love a good story, and I'm really grateful that I found a community that celebrates that and celebrates the one good thing I'm good at, and that is when I really felt like I was Jewish.
Well, speaking of feeling like you're Jewish, Harriet would like to know if you've had any experiences with anti-Semitism.
Yeah, I have. But what's weird about that is, and this is again, maybe a sign that I was always meant to be a Jew. Even before I converted, people would say anti-Semitic things to me, either in the comments or, online or in different things. And I remember a couple years ago, I did a thing on CNN and it like got some attention. And I was looking, which is, you should never do. If you ever get on television and do something that is sort of like notary, and don't look at the comments section ever of anything. But there was a lot of anti-Semitic stuff, and in a weird way, I mean, it sucks and it's horrible and it shouldn't exist in the world, and it is what it is, but it happens. But I wouldn't say I've gotten it more since converting. I think it's remained pretty much the same throughout, which I'm grateful for that, I guess.
Good. I have a very important question. What does the H stand for?
Oh, well, okay. So my real name is Scott Allen Hottinger. That's my birth name. And a funny story, my dad wasn't at my birth and my mom was really angry, and I was supposed to be named Carl Rudolph Hottinger, but my mom, out of spite, named me after the doctor that presided at my birth, Dr. Scott Allen. So that's how I got the name. The H, though, when I first started performing, people can't pronounce the name because it's a German name, and they look at it and they say it in lots of weird ways. And if you look how it's spelled, Hoeninger, people look at it and often say it in a really inappropriate way. There's a lot of inappropriate words that exist within my last name. And so I would always, when I was doing comedy shows, people would focus on those words. And it was really annoying because you just want people to laugh at your jokes, not at your name. And so I quickly realized I had to change my name. So in college, I changed it to H. Allen Scott. I just flipped my name, and it's how everyone knows me, and that's what the H is.
Good, that's good. Nanette is saying that the film was wonderful and so moving, and to please send me the info when the Audible project comes out so that I can forward it to everyone listening and watching tonight.
I will, definitely. Yeah, thank you.
Renee is wondering, if you choose to marry, would you have to marry someone Jewish?
No, I don't think so. You know, so after the film, I met someone. We're still together. We live together here in LA, and he's not Jewish. And I don't mind that he's not Jewish, but he also doesn't make me not be Jewish. So it's a nice blended home. And in a weird way, I kind of think that's kind of my role, is to celebrate identities in blended situations, because like that's really been my purpose even as a Jew, and talking about the film and out there in the world, and and just communicating about who I am, is sort of the idea of celebrating sort of blended families and how they're still just as Jewish, just in a different kind of way.
Beautiful. Building on that, Frankie is interested to know to what extent you celebrate Jewish traditions and holidays.
Oh, you froze there for a little bit. Can you say the question again?
To what extent do you celebrate Jewish traditions and holidays?
I definitely do. I mean, I'm not big on celebrating anything, to be honest. Even before I was Jewish, I kind of always hated Christmas. But I do. I am definitely observant, and I like I said, well, in normal times I would go to temple, but not this year. Everything has been by Zoom, and I will be doing. There is a nice little Purim show that I'm doing, and well, obviously on Purim. That will be lots of fun, and I'm sure will be out there. It's like through JCC stuff, so or through Hillel, excuse me, like the national Hillel people. So that'll be fun. But yeah, I do. I definitely do, and it's I have a nice little core friends out here that I recognize holidays with, and it's nice. It's really nice.
In addition to that, Phyllis wants to know if Christmas is important in your life. So interesting, just holidays in general. I'm sure you celebrate with your family.
Yeah,
any thoughts?
That's interesting. Like it's Christmas. One of the things that I've noticed is like whenever, like as a convert, I feel like, and maybe even Jason can relate to this, the question of Christmas is very important, and people like Jews want to know about it. But then I also have my best friend here, Elliot. He was raised Jewish, and he's so jealous of people who have Christmas, and he's always loved Christmas, even though he's Jewish. And he won't have a tree, of course, and he won't celebrate in the way that Christians normally would, but he just loves the pageantry of Christmas. And I'll say this about Christmas. Christmas has never been a religious holiday for me. It is never. I understand symbolically what it represents in terms of sort of, I think it's very important for Jews to be very stern in that like we don't celebrate Christmas. We celebrate. We recognize Hanukkah and like that. I think that's important. But at the same time, I also think I love a good pageant, you know what I mean? And I love anything that's over the top. And you give me an ugly sweater, you give me a lot of lights, you give me some tinsel, and I will probably make a drag outfit out of it. And it will be lovely. But no, I don't miss Christmas. But like I said, I never really even cared about Christmas other than maybe a couple of the movies and definitely the cookies. But beyond that, it never really meant anything to me in the first place. So but that also might be a Mormon thing. I don't know. I have other Mormon families that never really cared about Christmas too. So I don't know, maybe it was just training for me to always not care about Christmas. But yeah, no, Christmas is important to me. But I do love the food.
Yeah. We haven't discussed too much about your cancer diagnosis and your chemotherapy experience. And so I was wondering if you can share a little bit about that, about how you're feeling now, and then, you know, any other, obviously this big life change occurred with choosing to convert after this, but were there any other effects that this experience had on you?
Yeah, cancer was one of those things that cancer and chemo specifically was one of those things that it it sort of recentered me in a lot of ways. And I think a lot of times sort of like how I think COVID may have been a cultural reset for humanity. I think chemo was the reset for me that I needed to sort of start doing the things that mattered to me. And health wise, I'm doing well. Everything is good. I could afford to lose a couple pounds, but hey, whatever, COVID. But like health wise, everything is great. That said, you know, I do have certain side effects from chemo that make me susceptible to other things that are very scary right now. And that never really goes away in your head. You know what I mean? That idea of like this thing that happened and it could come back to you. And that's a scary thought. And for me at least, it made me more grateful for whatever I have in this moment, and just sort of recognize that and to not kind of wait for things to come for me, that I have to actually do them myself. And I'm very forward thinking in that way. And that's probably the biggest thing that happened to me after chemo. And I'm in a weird way grateful for it, because it really helped me center myself in a lot of ways that I didn't really have before. I was kind of scatterbrained and all over the place, and chemo and then converting and everything sort of since then has really centered me into who I am. And I think right now I feel more like myself than I kind of ever have before in my life. And I don't feel like I'm doing it for anybody other than myself, which is kind of a really lovely feeling, you know, to not have to feel like you have to be something for other people. Um, so yeah, does that answer the question? Cancer is always
Yes.
a hard thing for me to process. Yeah.
No, that was lovely. And Jason followed up. Jason, about the Christmas comments, says, yes, I completely understand. I never cared much for Christmas. And he said, I'd also recommend the book, A Kosher Christmas by Joshua
Oh,
Eli
cute.
Clout, to everyone who might be interested. So check that out.
That's great. Will.
Yes. And we have time for one more question. I was hoping we could end on the note of just some of your thoughts on the messages of putting out this film, your goals, and what you're trying to convey in this incredible story.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, for me, one of the biggest things that I hoped, and I told Eliza and everyone involved in the film early on, one of the biggest things that I wanted to do with this was to show people, Jews and non-Jews, that, you know, whatever you think you're supposed to be, or what you were raised to be, or whatever mindset you think you're kind of, I mean, if you agree with it, great. But if you don't, and if you feel like you've been forced into a box, it's never really too late to sort of get out of that box and go explore other things, and really find who you are and where you feel comfortable in your community. And for me, that is the Jewish community. And I hope more people, and I do think that the Jewish community is a place where a lot of growth and love and harmony can really grow in the world if more people just sort of well, if more people were Jewish, but that's my own bias speaking. But I really hope that people just sort of be comfortable with who they are and really do that hard work to find out who they are, and to realize also that it's an ongoing thing. You know, you discover things about yourself all the time. And I really want Jews who watch this film to be open to that, but also open to the idea that Jews come in a lot of different stripes, and to be more sort of like, and I think a lot of Jews, I think most Jews are very open to all types of Jews, but you know, I one of the things that this film, like I said before, one of the things that have happened in the response to this film is, you know, I've had a lot of Hasidic trans people message me and talk about their experience getting out of that community and finding a Jewish community, but somehow maintaining that Jewish identity while also coming to grips with their identity and who they are, and how that kind of went against the Jewish identity that they knew and grew up with. And I've had quite a few trans people message me in that respect, and it's been really lovely to really see people find that being Jewish doesn't have to be one way, and that they can be Jewish in lots of different ways, and that there's a Jewish community for you if you really just find it and look for it. And there's Jewish people out there that are like you, that think like you, and to do the work to find those people. And it's been really gratifying for me to maybe have people be happier about being Jewish and be more excited about being Jewish, and just be more excited about being themselves. And so ultimately that is my hope for the film, is that people are just really, really happy with being themselves, because you're great.
You're such an inspiration. It's a beautiful message. It really is. And
Thank you.
I couldn't be more grateful for your time this evening, for your story, for your courage, for your bravery and your inspiration and your humor.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
All things that we're in dire need of right now. And we're just so grateful for your time, and thank you so much for being here with us tonight. Everyone who hasn't watched the film,
thank you for having
please
me.
watch. Thank you to Karen and the Rutgers.
I hope to come back to New Jersey soon.
I would love
Jersey.
that. Thank you, Karen. Please check out all the films still available through the Rutgers Jewish Film Festival. We thank you all for being here tonight. We're getting lots of thanks, H. Allen, in the chat. Thank you all so much. Have a good night.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Randy. Good night.
Good night, Karen. Thanks so much.